Wylly Willmott here with the National Sports Media Association, and today I have the privilege of speaking with Larry Stone, 2023's Washington State Sportswriter of the Year. Larry, thank you for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you're no stranger to this award. It's the fourth time you've won it. But does winning it in 2023, the final year of your career, change that meaning for you at all?
Well, it was really gratifying because, as you alluded to, I retired at the end of the year. So to win that in my final year was really meaningful to me. Um, Felt
Yeah.
like I kind of went out on top, I guess.
No, definitely. As all sports fans know, that's the best way to go out. And I know getting started in your career, you answered an ad in your school newspaper when you were at Cal seeking sports writers. Was it really as simple as I like to write and I like sports, so I'm going to pursue this? Or was there anything else that sort of inspired you to go down that path?
Well, really, that was pretty much it. I can honestly say that I can honestly say that I had no designs on being a sports writer when I went to Cal. I was just like most college freshmen, just kind of figuring out what my life's path was going to be. And once I answered that ad and started writing, Cal baseball was my initial beat. I just realized that I'd kind of found my calling. I love the whole process of interviewing and researching and writing and deadline. I even love deadlines. 45 years in newspapers, and I miss the thrill of having 20 minutes to write a coherent story. So
Yeah.
it just suited me. The whole thing just suited me.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. And then as a sports fan growing up, do you remember a particular moment from your childhood, either that you witnessed or from your own life playing sports, as a child that made you fall in love with sports?
Yeah, it was. I was a Dodger fanatic growing up in Southern California. I lived and died with the Dodgers. When they won the World Series in '63, I was just 6 years old. In '65, just starting to kind of come into really knowing what was going on. Uh, and then they lost the World Series in '66, which was heartbreaking for me. But just yeah, those Dodger teams really is what cemented me as a sports fan. And also growing up in Southern California and reading the Los Angeles Times, which at the time was just a real powerhouse of great writers,
Mm.
topped by Jim Murray, the legendary columnist. And I think that sort of imbued in me a sense of good writing. And even though I don't think I realized it, but just I voraciously read the paper every day. And I think that subconsciously set in me the knowledge that there's real value in that kind of writing. So I think those two things were formidable for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're exposed to that level of writing at such a young age, it sets a good standard for sure. Going back to,
Absolutely.
yeah, to 2023, was there a specific story like that you covered during the year that was particularly meaningful or really like gratifying to cover?
Well, the All Star game was in town. The Major League All Star team was in Seattle. Major League All Star game rather, and that was extremely fun to cover. You had the whole baseball world there watching you. So I love moments like that. Um, Boy, I didn't make it to the end because I retired before they reached the championship game. But being a part of the Husky University of
Mm.
Washington season, where they made it all the way to the national title game against Michigan, the early stages of it at least was very cool for me
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely. And sort of the, farewell tour for the Pac-12 as well. Definitely.
Yeah, that was yeah. Now that you mentioned that, I should have mentioned that story. Yeah, I grew up in the Pac-8, as I
Mm,
mentioned, in Los Angeles, and then I went to when I was at Cal, it became the Pac-10 while I was in
right.
school, and then it became the Pac-12 later on. So I've been through all these incarnations of the league, and pretty much my whole life has been spent in the Pac 8, 10, 12. So
Yeah.
that was just that whole story, the rise and or the fall of the Pac-12 last year was an extremely poignant and
Mm.
meaningful one for me as well.
No, absolutely. And welcome to the ACC. That's where I went to school. Yeah,
Yeah,
I grew up the same thing,
can't take it.
Pac-10 to Pac-12 transition, and now the ride's over. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, like speaking of Washington, as we've talked about a little bit here, California native, went to school there. And then you mentioned in your farewell article, which was beautiful, by the way, I really enjoyed reading that. You mentioned applying to newspapers up and down the coast. Did you always plan on staying west? Did you ever consider leaving? And then follow up to that, what has it meant to get to cover sports like in the Bay Area, in Washington for your career?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I probably would have expanded my my reach if I hadn't landed a job on the West Coast. If I wanted to work, I probably would have. But you know, I did I did grow up in California and went to school there, and I wanted to stay there, and or at least as close as I could
Mhm.
be. And it just happened to be Yakima, Washington, that was the most aggressive
Yeah.
and really the only the only place that was willing to hire me. But it turned out to be a great place
Yeah, it only takes
for
one
me.
place being interested.
That's right, and it was a really good place because it was 40,000 circulation, not a bad place to start daily. We had a really good sports editor, Jim Scoggins, who's a friend to this day, who really pushed me and the other young guy at our paper, Don Shelton, who later became my boss in Seattle. Um, and we got to do uh, ambitious things, like we'd cover the Seahawks, the Huskies, the Washington State. So it was a great first job for me. And then I just started moving around, kind of stepping up the ladder until I ended up in Seattle in '96 and stayed there the next 27 years. But yeah, it was super rewarding to cover, on different levels. High school sports for the first 6 years was as fun as anything I did. I those were extremely important years in developing the craft and learning how to talk to people and reporting and all that. And I loved it. And then various other stages, I got to cover pretty much everything in my career, from colleges, high schools, pros, a super variety of sports. So uh, the whole thing was just, it was in a lot of ways, it was a dream career, and I look back really fondly.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you've alluded to it a little bit. A huge part of your job as a writer is connecting with people. You have to understand people to be able to write about them and share their stories. And so when you're delving into these human stories, I think despite like all the social media and how the world is seemingly more interconnected today, it's still a little bit of a lost art. It takes a lot of practice to, have those skills and make those connections. So I was wondering if you could share with me maybe interactions you had that taught you a lot about how to connect with others, or maybe advice given to you from a mentor, and just anything that has helped you effectively make
Yeah.
people feel heard or feel seen.
Yeah. There's been so many
Mm,
interactions, and I think the thing I would tell people is just genuine curiosity, empathy, and listen. A lot of people, a lot of people when they're interviewing, they're thinking about their next question,
right.
and they're not really listening to what the person says. And I try to go into an interview and let the interview tell me where to go next.
Mhm.
Uh, Often that's where you find out the best stuff, is when you veer off track. And if you really listen to what the person's saying and it triggers some sort of curiosity, you explore that. And so, I think if I had a strength, I think I was a pretty good listener. Uh and I think people warmed up to that. They realized that it was a real conversation you were having, not just some formal interview. So uh that's the advice I would give to people, is and have
Yeah.
empathy. Athletes, we talk to athletes a lot in moments of great success, but we also talk to them in moments of great failure. And I don't think sometimes we, as a group, realize that these people give their heart and soul and
Right.
blood and guts, and that these moments, when they've had some sort of failure, they lost a big game or got knocked out, pitching or whatever it was, that we need to, you know, understand where they
Yeah,
are.
you're right
And
about empathy
it's
for
not,
sure.
they're in a dark spot sometimes, and you've got to treat it as such.
Yeah, no, well, that's great advice even for my next interviews as I'm continuing along my journey. Speaking with the winners who luckily they're in a good place when I'm speaking with them. But I guess another question about these sort of advice you could give to someone like me who's high school, college, wanting to start a career covering sports, whether that's broadcasting or writing. Do you have other advice? Empathy
Yeah.
and listening are incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the industry's changed so much. I worked, as I mentioned, 45 years, and I only every paycheck I ever got was for a newspaper. So I know nothing but the newspaper world, and I don't know. I don't think that's going to be possible for very much longer. But I guess I would tell young people, I still think it's a valuable profession to go into, even with all the troubles. But I think you need to just sort of diversify and learn a lot of different skills, all the new technology and everything, the ability to adapt to the whatever new world is coming, because there's
Yeah.
the industry is changing so rapidly. But beyond that, you need to be able to, if you could tell a story well, either writing it or verbalizing it in the electronic, television or radio industry, uh, there's always a spot for that. So just learn how to tell a story well, and learn all the technology that is bringing those stories to people, because that's constantly changing. But a good story is always a good story in
Yeah.
1920 and 2020. So
No,
that's what I'd have
absolutely.
to
Did
say.
you see a lot of those changes over the course of your career about how you write it? Did how you write a story change or more how you distributed it?
Yeah, it was how you distribute it. I mean, I started my career pre-internet. So,
Yeah.
I mean, my first job was in 1979 in Yakima, and there was we barely had computers. I mean, I wrote my first story on a manual typewriter in college. So that's how far we've come. There was not even computers, and there was no portable computers in Yakima when we first started. We'd go out and cover a game, and we'd have to race back to the office and write our stories there. And then slowly, portable computers. At first, they were really clunky, and like
Right.
you wouldn't even believe what we were working on
No.
those early days, and how bad they were. But uh, couldn't even dream of the internet and podcast and Twitter. I mean, Twitter's changed things as much as anything in
Mm,
my career, really. And that was you couldn't even dream of something like that when I started. So
right.
yeah, there's been there's been so many changes, and in some ways it's a lot easier. Google has changed. Has made things so much easier. Instead of
Right.
when I covered when I was a baseball beat writer, I would jam my suitcase with all these reference books, the baseball encyclopedia, the baseball registers, because that was the only way to get stats
Oh
and
yeah.
records and stuff. Now you just type it in and you've got it in 2 seconds, instead of having to pore over all these books. So yeah, but on the other hand, it's made research very much easier, and access to any information that you need. But you're also on the clock now from the moment you get up.
Mm,
I don't know if I could do a beat now, where you got to check Twitter when you wake up and make sure nothing happened, and then all day long you're checking. And if a story breaks, you got to write it right away. When I started, there was one deadline at the end at 10 o'clock at night, and so you had all day to research a story and write it, and you didn't have to worry about getting it out there immediately so you can get clicks and stuff. So it's a whole different mindset. But it is what it is, and you've got to adapt to it, and that's what I tried to do.
right. Yeah, absolutely. As where one aspect like research gets easier, yeah, the deadlines they're
There
yeah.
is it's a
There isn't
deadline.
any
It's a
deadline,
constant
it's
deadline.
just do it
Yeah.
now, I guess. Oh,
Exactly,
that's
exactly, and I
amazing.
think that hurts journalism too, because if there was a pre-internet, if there was a big story on my beat, I would
Mm,
have all day to explore that, what it meant, talk to people, research it, report it. Um, let it sort of go around in my brain, and I think you've got a more nuanced, balanced story than just, okay, I got to get that in 20 minutes.
Right,
At
yeah.
least the first story's got to be out in 20 minutes, and uh, that should be reporting time. Sometimes when a story breaks, you don't know what it means yet. It takes a while. So, uh, there's something to be said for letting a story percolate a little bit before you write it.
Yeah, because these days, I guess the Woj bomb, the headline is what people want, what maybe the
Yeah,
newspaper that you're gonna work for are gonna want right away, rather than
exactly.
maybe more of the connection, the investigation pieces. So do you think there's still like a spot for the longer form journalism? Do we have to
I
make
do. Yeah,
it?
I do, because I think people crave they crave the instant, the Woj bomb, but they also crave the long analysis piece. Those do just as well in a lot of cases, on Clickwise and stuff. When I would write, I should stop using the present tense. It's the past tense now for me. But when I would
You're
write,
still right.
when I would write a long and profile or feature, those did just as well as the quick hits in a lot of
Good.
cases. I think people like complexity and nuance and all that. So hopefully, there's always a place for that.
Oh, good to hear. Glad future is still bright, even when it doesn't always seem like that. Well, congratulations again, on your award, and it was really great to speak with you today.
Thanks, Wiley. I enjoyed it.